Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. We go to the phones, and GOP political strategist Matt Mackowiak joins us. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Morning, Chad. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. Thank you again for joining us today. Appreciate it, as always. Let's take a look at one of the stories going around from over the weekend, and that is, I guess, House Republicans or experts looking at the midterm elections think that Speaker Nancy Pelosi is almost a sure thing after the midterm elections. Is it too early to go ahead and start saying that? What do you think? Things are starting to, I guess, line up now for 2018.
Yeah, I think it is too early to say that. We don't even really know what the environment's going to be. We're still 10 months, 9 months away, 9.5 months away from the election. There are some warning signs for Republicans. There's no question about that. Democrats have improved their performance in different districts in different states around the country. Obviously, they won the Alabama U.S. Senate seat in a special election. That was a very unique situation. But even if you look back at the special elections for U.S. House in the last year, while they didn't win those seats in Republican areas, they did make gains compared to their performance in November. You add to that Trump's job approval rating in the mid to high 30s. That's historically weak after the first year of a presidency, and that will affect the midterms. You add to that the generic ballot, where Democrats have a historic advantage in the generic ballot for Congress. All these things matter, and it's very hard for presidents not to lose seats in their first midterm. I think the only president that's done that in the modern era was George W. Bush in 2002, and that was, of course, just a few months after 9/11, so it was a little bit of a unique election. Look, what matters now is, does the tax bill work, and do people broadly feel that it worked? I think here in a couple weeks, you're going to start seeing people receiving, not sending more money, more tax money to Washington, as the withholding tables will be updated by the IRS. And so if they're having their taxes withheld by their employer, that they're going to have more take-home pay starting in February. That's going to have an effect, both psychologically but also economically. And then you add to that just the overall economy. I think the expectation is you're going to see faster economic growth in the second or perhaps third quarter of this year. And so far we've seen anecdotal evidence of hiring, of spending, of investment, of bonuses, things in those areas that are a very good sign. But we have to see what happens. And so the economy is going to be a big part of it. Obviously, whatever else happens this year, immigration, infrastructure, national security issues. The bottom line is, I think Democrats feel they have the wind at their back, and they may be a little bit overconfident right now. But sure, Republicans should be very concerned.
A lot of Republicans are retiring, and we see that even with the Texas delegation. Are you surprised by that? And what do you think the reasoning is for all of these Republicans who have decided, you know what, I'm done. Even though we have the White House, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, the choice to retire from Congress is a deeply personal one. And I think that the calculation that any one member makes will be different from any other one member. But look, the problem with retirements is that it expands the playing field for the party that isn't having the retirements. I think we've had something like 30 retirements so far. I think I saw, almost half of those are not people who are retiring, but people who are running for a higher office, either U.S. Senate or governor. So the number can be a little bit misleading. But sure, I mean, it can, in some circumstances, for example, someone like Jeff Hensarling of the Dallas area, or Lamar Smith from the Austin San Antonio district that he has, they both are term limited. They're committee chairs. They don't have an obvious place to go. And so rather than come back and be a backbench member, maybe the time to go out is as a chairman. For other members, they've been there a very long time. Ted Poe's been there a very long time, and I think he, in Houston, for example, is probably thinking about his health and his family. So it's one of those things where, it does look like a trend given the numbers, and it's not a good thing for Republicans, because the party's going to have to spend money on incumbents that they weren't counting on having to spend money on. But most of these seats where these retirements are not happening in competitive districts. We have 8 retirements for Congress across the state of Texas out of 36 congressional districts. In my mind, none of those are competitive. Now, Democrats think one of them is competitive. They think they have an outside shot at the Lamar Smith district. We'll see what happens. I tend to think that won't be competitive. But so ultimately, those retirements, at least in the Texas delegation, 8 of those, I think, won't affect who has the majority in the House or Senate.
Sort of two questions here for you. What do you think will eventually happen, if anything, on DACA and border security. And 2, this week, spending runs out. Do you think we'll see another continuing resolution, or do you think we'll see a government shutdown?
Yeah, good questions. Let me take the second one first because it's a little bit more immediate. You do have this spending deadline. I think it's like 3 or 4 days away. Keep in mind they've been doing continuing resolutions at least twice before that I can remember. I think once around September 30th and then once in December before the holidays. Democrats desperately want DACA to be part of this, a so-called clean DACA bill. That's not going to happen. I don't think that would pass the House, number one, and number two, that would be Republicans giving up a tremendous point of leverage. So the question is, are Democrats going to shut the government down if they don't get a clean DACA extension in the spending bill? And this is one of those situations where Republicans really have to press the point here. Do they really want to stop disaster funding? Do they want to stop funding our military? Do they want to stop Social Security checks? I mean, these are the real world impacts of shutting the government down. So no, I don't think they will. I don't think it's in either party's interest that they shut the government down. But Democrats, you might see some theatrics over the next couple of days as the deadline gets closer. On DACA, look, I think the contours of the deal are there. A significant boost in border security, something that gives legal certainty to the 700,000, 800,000 people that are receiving DACA benefits. And then the question is, are they going to get rid of the visa lottery, and are they going to go from chain migration to a merit-based system? And what is the process for that? Last week when Trump was meeting with congressional leaders, it sounded like they basically understood what they wanted, but it sounded like maybe they were going to do it in a two-step way. I think if they don't use DACA as leverage, they may never get the deal that they want on everything else. So it's a very complicated thing, and it's even more complicated in an election year. I do think that Trump is the kind of president that can get this done because he has such credibility on border security and on immigration issues with his base. He's the kind of president that probably can do a big deal and sell it, and that's not necessarily true of past Republican presidents.
Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your newsletter and also the latest details on your podcast.
Yeah, thanks for that. I have a podcast called Mac on Politics, 64 episodes, 84 5-star reviews in the iTunes store. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. We've had U.S. senators, congressmen, ambassadors, journalists, you name it. We've had them on the podcast. Check that out. And then we do a morning email for the state of Texas for all the top news around the state at mustreadtexas.com. 3,000 Texans get it every weekday morning. You can sign up there.
Very good. Matt, have a good week. We'll visit with you next week.
Take care.
All right. That's Matt Mackowiak.